Welcome back to another episode of the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. I am your host, CJ Duncan. Thank you again for being with us and tuning in. Oh man, we have a huge weekend of college football this coming up weekend. I would even like to say that this is probably the playoff before the playoff. You just can't beat the type of drama and theatrics that we're having now in the SEC. Everybody fighting for a spot. It's going to be a horse race all the way to the end. We're about 3 weeks out to the final game of the regular season. So before we dive into that, would like to introduce our guest today. Our guest has been with us before. It's a familiar face, my brother Collin Duncan, former Mississippi State standout. Collin, thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely, man. This is always fun to get on here. We talk ball almost every day, so might as well put it on camera. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, it's a pleasure to have you today. We just want to jump into ball. We want to get into the weeds, talk about the details of the game, talk about what these teams are going to need to do in the coming weeks to finally make that final push for the playoff. And we can't. I think we talk about playoffs so much that we forget how important it is to win an SEC championship too. You win the SEC championship, it gives you a bye for that first week of the playoff. So that's also very important. You got a handful of teams right now that are pretty much in that race, right? You've got Texas, you've got Georgia, you got Tennessee, you got Alabama, you got LSU. These are the teams that we'll be keeping an eye out on the rest of this season. Is there a particular team that stands out? We'll get into predictions later on in the show, but right now, is there a particular team, Colin, that you like more than others?
Oh man, that's tough. I think it's Texas, man. I mean, their depth is actually like, as a former player, you understand when you get this late in the season, depth is how you win ball games. You know what I mean? A lot of guys gonna get banged up. And the rare thing, it's one thing to have depth on, the offensive line, have depth at running back, have depth at receiver, DB, linebacker, D line, all that. It's one thing to have that, but when you have depth at quarterback and like you can win big time ball games with your second string quarterback, that's scary. You know what I'm saying? That's something that's going to keep head coaches and DCs up at night, studying extra and stuff like that, man. I think right now when Texas is playing its best ball and not turning the ball over, I don't see a lot of teams in the nation right now really beating them, especially in Austin.
Yeah, no, I like Texas a lot too. They of course had the disappointing loss against Georgia, but like I've said before, it is better to lose early than late, because the committee, they just have recency bias, right? So
Yeah,
Texas lost that game, but if they come back the rest of the season and they're having blowout victories, I like to see them kind of competing for a top slot in that
absolutely.
playoff. But before we get into the details of these games coming up this weekend, I want to talk a little bit about your experience, right? So we've got another epic matchup, what looks to be an epic matchup of Alabama versus LSU, and that will be at Death Valley. I can't personally speak on that. I played in the SEC for 4 years and never played LSU. But Colin, you have played against LSU, and you've played against them at night. Please just, paint the picture for our audience of what it means to play at Death Valley. And does LSU play a little bit better when it's a night game?
To your question, yes, it's night and day difference. They're already a great ball club. I mean, they that the LSU motto, the standard that school lives by when it comes to football, they put it on the field every Saturday. But it's at nighttime, it's just a whole nother level to it. I mean, LSU at night is one of those things where like it's you walk away from the game not really understanding like how crazy the atmosphere was. Like you're just honestly you're kind of confused because you've never experienced it. You come off the field on a big drive, you sit on the bench, and you're looking at your guy next to you, you're just like, man, like it's loud in here. It's like it's the best way I can describe it. And I tell people this all the time. I get a lot of questions about what's the hardest stadium to play in. Is it the nighttime thing? Death Valley at night is like going to a house party with 110,000 people, and they all are on one beat. They scream together, they dance together, they sing together. They're all in tune with the game, and it's almost like their fans know exactly what's going on in the game. You'll go to some stadiums and the fans might not really be in tune with the game. You know what I'm saying? Something big may
No,
happen.
their
They might
fans are engaged. They're engaged.
very engaged,
Yeah.
very engaged, man. Those are football loving people in that stadium, and it's 109,000 at least in there.
Well, and I feel like their players really do respond to the energy in the stadium. And, for a while there, I think it was last year, Deion Sanders was bringing out all the celebrities before the Colorado Buff games. He
Mhm.
had Lil Wayne walk him out of the tunnel, and then you see Hall of Famers all up and down the sideline. And everyone kind of freaked out, like, oh man, there's a lot going on here. This is a very flashy situation. And in a way, it is. It's not something that I, technically would want. I'm so dialed in. I don't care about all the noise on the
Yeah.
outside. But if you think about it, LSU's been doing that for years.
Oh my
LSU
God.
always has Odell Beckham on the sideline. They've got Shaq on the sideline. I've seen Lil Wayne. LSU, it is an event when it is time for LSU to play in Death Valley at night. I guarantee you'll see half of their NFL alumni base at this game on Saturday. So it's going to be a fun one to watch. I don't know if you saw this, but Lane Kiffin had some words about
Yes.
LSU or whoever does the scheduling. He's like, these guys somehow or another, every big game they've had this year has been at night and at home. And he was like, we
Yes.
haven't had one night game. They're
Yes.
playing at 11 o'clock every weekend. And
Uh,
so, you know what? Lane is not wrong, but it's
he
kind of
has a
interesting
great
how
point.
LSU's, the games that they really need, they just happen to be very favorable conditions for LSU.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but if you think about it, like when has it not been like that? Like, let's be
Yeah.
real. Like,
Yeah.
like, and honestly, you just gotta think it's a big ticket game. It's a big
Hmm.
ticket game. I mean, you're gonna get more audience tune in when it hits 7 o'clock and you see the SEC symbol come on that TV and it is Death Valley at night. Like it doesn't get better than that. That's
Crazy.
SEC ball to a T.
You can feel it through the TV.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to be able to watch you play there. And so I saw it firsthand, but I mean, I could be sitting on my couch and I feel the
Yes.
electricity in that place. So I can't imagine how pumped up the guys are going to be that night in Death Valley. So what does LSU need to do this weekend to beat this year's Alabama team, the Coach DeBoer coach team, the one led by Jalen Milroe? What does LSU have to do on Saturday?
Be LSU.
Yeah.
Just be LSU. Don't turn the ball over. Make good decisions. You know what I'm saying? The quarterback is going to take them as far as they want to take them. You know what I'm saying? That quarterback has the potential to do great things. And I think when he's at his best and he's not turning the ball over, I mean, that's a very hard team to beat. I mean, you got some very, very good weapons on the outside with Lacey and a couple of those other guys. You got good running backs. The offensive line, I think the offensive line hadn't allowed a sack all year, which is insane to be in the SEC and not have allowed a sack all year. And I mean, the LSU defense, I mean, I feel like every week they just get better and better and better. They take huge strides. I mean, they got great linebackers. The DB started off maybe a little rough at the beginning of the season, but now they're starting to pick it up and starting to uphold that tradition of being a good secondary over there at LSU. I mean, I don't think LSU has to be anybody but LSU. They just got to play their game. They have the home field advantage. It's going to be a night game. You know what I'm saying? They got the weapons to do it. They got the quarterback to do it. They got the defense to do it. They just got to go in there, treat this like a normal game, and go out there and execute. Don't throw any interceptions. Don't turn the ball over.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've got down here, I feed off the atmosphere in the stadium. That plays to LSU's favor. They usually play better when they are
Mhm.
pumped up, when they are
Yeah,
energized, when
yeah,
they are really into the game. I've got on here, protect Nussmeier, and
yeah.
Nussmeier, you protect the ball. If you do those type of things, they'll be okay. Because listen, Alabama, you've got to remember they've got those young corners.
Very
This is
young,
their first time playing in Death Valley. If
very
you're
young.
the corner on the opposite side of the field from your sideline,
It's a
sometimes it's hard to
lonely.
go to see or hear the play that's coming in. So
It's
now you're on an
lonely,
island by yourself against
lonely,
veteran receivers.
very lonely.
The communication is going to be a big deal for these young guys on the Alabama side. So if they protect Nussmeier, I mean, the dude's a gunslinger. At the end of the day, it's
I
like
love it.
he
Yeah,
may
no, he
throw a few
really is.
picks, but he's still going to throw for 400 yards, though.
Exactly,
I love the
exactly.
way he plays. I think he's done really well for himself. It's even as far as the NFL is concerned, next for this draft, I think he is
Yeah,
climbing up the boards. This isn't necessarily the best quarterback. I mean, yeah, quarterback class, but I think he has done really well for himself. I think he's climbing that ladder. And then I have on here, stop the run.
yeah,
Stop the run. That's the only way Bama beats you. Make Jalen Milroe beat you in the air. Make that offensive line that
yeah.
has struggled a little bit recently block. Make them pass set. Make Jalen Milroe throw 30 times, 35
Mhm.
times. And you know
Right.
how you do that? You jump out to an early lead and play off the crowd.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, it's just like you said, man. It's just the simple things. You gotta make Jalen stay in that pocket. You can't get him out there where he's out there creating with his feet out in open space. Because let's just be honest, there's not a linebacker in the country that's going to keep up with him. There's really not a safety in the country that's
Mm-mm.
probably going to keep up with him. And then the only people that can keep up with him are corners, and there's not a corner in the nation that's going to be able to tackle him in
They
open
don't want to hit
space.
him. Mm-mm.
So if you can keep Jalen in that pocket, you'll be okay. And now he can beat you on a deep ball. He has a great deep ball. He's got receivers that can go and get it. They can go and get it. But I'd rather die by him throwing than die a slow death by letting him just run around that field, out there like it's a pee-wee game and score touchdowns left and right with his feet. So, I mean, Alabama's a good team. Both teams are coming off a bye week, which I think we both can agree to. It's a huge difference. That bye week, I mean,
Guys are getting healthy,
I
and
mean,
health is
I,
everything at the end of a football season, especially in this
yes.
conference. You don't want to be run out of depth. You don't want to
Hmm.
be playing with, at Alabama and LSU, your second and third string guys are probably pretty good too, but
Yeah.
there's a reason why they're second and third string though, right?
Right.
You want to be playing with your guys in a game like this that says, "Hey, look, it's winner take all." I think whoever wins this particular game is going to be the team between the two that ends up in the playoff. Neither
Yeah.
team can lose anymore. They have to win out from here.
Hmm.
So what does Alabama have to do? What do they need to do to win this game on Saturday?
I think Alabama's going to have to win it on the defensive side. I I think Alabama has a good offense. I know they have a good offense, but the thing with them is that their volume of scoring has been lower than it usually is. Bama's not going to go punch for punch throughout the game. You know what I'm saying? They don't have that Bryce Young offense. They don't have that Mac Jones offense where they can go, we can go 60 for 60. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? We can go
Mhm.
60 points and you go 60 points, and we can see whoever has the ball last, we win. That's not a Bama team that we're looking at. They got to win on a defensive side. They got a good defensive line that can go and hunt the quarterback. They got to play a great game. Those young DBs, it's time to grow up. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's time to grow up. We're mid to late season, and I could remember some of my coaches. I mean, we had to rely on some freshmen. And some of my coaches would say, look, we're halfway through the season. You're not a freshman anymore. You
Right.
have over 100 snaps under your belt. You need to pick it up. We need to
Mhm.
go. And I mean, the thing about it, their young guys are special.
They're good
I mean,
players, good athletes.
if I'm correct, the two rookie corners that they have, both of them have interceptions on the season
They do.
in big
And one of them
games.
was a Georgia game,
One was a
the
Georgia,
game-winning interception.
and one was a Tennessee game, wasn't it?
Yes, correct.
So
Mbakwe,
if
who we know well, Mbakwe
play
is a
Charles,
Birmingham native, and so
yes.
we always root for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the guys know what they're doing. You know, they look good, they look comfortable, they look more and more comfortable, I should say, every game. And I mean, look, I mean, if the game tilts towards Bama, I'm gonna go ahead and say it here. If the game tilts towards Bama, look to those two young corners having a big game.
Yeah.
Having a big game. Maybe an interception, a couple late PBUs, you know what I'm saying? A couple goal line stops, maybe a good tackle, you know what I'm saying? If Bama wins, because let's be honest, this is a good coaching staff at LSU. They're going to attack the youth.
Oh, for
They're
sure.
going to attack the youth. So they're going to have a lot of opportunities in this game to make a lot of big plays. So if these guys go out there and they make big plays, Bama has a good chance of winning this game.
Yeah. And Alabama fans, just stick with these young corners, man. These
Yes.
guys are going to be special one day. You can't coach the athleticism and the speed that they have there, but you also got to look at it from a holistic view. Mbakwe was a quarterback in high school. And for him to be this far along as a corner to where he's getting real playing time in an SEC game in big moments, that's a big deal. He's still
Huge.
learning how to play corner, and he's already this
Huge.
good. Imagine if he gets another year under his belt, he's going to be the best corner in the country. So just give
Man.
him a little time to figure things out and to start to be a little instinctive at the position. Once he
Oh,
gets that
God.
instinct, once that clicks in, you're going to see how special of an athlete the guy is. But you
Absolutely.
know what? It's funny that you say corners got to grow up. I mean, that's literally what I have down on my sheet here on my notes. I said corners got to grow up. Jump out to an early lead. Take the fan base out of it.
Yes.
Quiet the stadium as soon as possible. Force Nussmeier to kind of press a little bit. You know,
Hmm.
because he is a gunslinger and he feels like he's pressing, he's going to throw balls in tight windows and maybe give you an
Absolutely.
opportunity. Or
Absolutely.
he may end up taking some unnecessary sacks because he's holding
Facts.
on to the ball too long. So you
Hmm.
get out to an early lead. That is the key for Alabama. One thing that I always say to my brother and those around me, they ask me like, "What do you think about the Alabama game this weekend? Not just this weekend, but every weekend." I say, "Run, Bama, run." I said that is the key to success for Alabama. Bama
Yes.
needs to get back to the old days, you know, when they had
Yes.
Mark and Trent, you know, run the ball,
Hmm.
Jam Miller and Kendrick Law, man, them dudes, they should like be crawling to the ice tub after this game. They should be crawling. I want them to have 40 touches, you know,
Yeah.
like literally, like
Yeah.
they need to be like workhorses this
Yeah.
weekend, control time of possession by doing that.
Hmm.
And if you hit them over the head with jam, and then you got the speed sweeps going with Kendrick Law, and you sometimes pull it with Milrow,
Yeah.
think about how open Ryan Williams is going to be,
Oh my
over the
God.
middle of the field. But to me, that's where you start. You don't start with six straight passes. You know, you don't start. I mean, Jalen Milrow should not have, in my opinion, if I'm calling this game, Jalen Milrow should not have over 20 pass attempts in this game. He
No.
should not have over 20 pass attempts.
No.
He, if they control a game and he's 20 or lower, Alabama wins this game. I really do believe that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's a tradition at Alabama. I mean, you can go all the way back to the coffee days where they had these big old running backs that are just, they're just ground and pound. I mean, and they still have them. They have
Eddie Lacy,
workhorses.
Derrick Henry. I
Man,
mean, the
I
list
mean,
goes on.
you can go on. And I mean, they still have those caliber types of guys back there. Man, if I'm Alabama, um, the first drive, if I'm the OC, I'm seeing who on the LSU team does not want to tackle tonight, and I'm running the ball to him at least 15 times.
Mhm.
I'm making the person who does not want to tackle on the field, I'm gonna make him tackle every single drive. I'm gonna make him have a career night. He's
Yeah,
gonna have 20 tackles by the end of the game.
yeah.
Either that or we're gonna score every single time. That's
No,
just how it works.
I
And then once
agree.
those safeties come down, I got to help my boy because he don't like to tackle. Once those safeties come down, there goes two. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Two's wide open
Mhm.
because you're not guarding two one on one. You're not.
No.
You're not guarding two one on one. He's proved it all season. So, like you said, around Bemaron, pull those safeties down to that box, get them down about in between 10 to 8 yards. Once they get those feet stuck in cement at 10 to 8 yards, Now it's time to start striking up the band.
Yeah, yeah. And we know this. There are shot zones on the field.
Hmm.
Don't get too greedy and you start taking shots
Exactly.
before it's necessary. You
Exactly.
know where the shot zone is, and
Absolutely.
you know what time of clock you need to throw it at and what down and
Hmm.
distance. So just don't be greedy. Take what they give you and try to establish your dominance early. Take their
Absolutely.
wheel early so that fan base and that atmosphere doesn't get too crazy. Because if it does, those guys play out of their mind. They go from playing like a B minus player to a A plus plus player just because they're playing in Death Valley.
With like NFL Pro Bowls out there.
So it's insane what happens there. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited to watch it.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a really good game. I just hope for a good game, but I do believe if Bama sticks to what we're talking about now, I think they have a really good chance of not only beating LSU, but winning out the rest of this season.
100%.
Now, tell me this. Did you watch that Ole Miss game this weekend? Wow. I mean, you
You
want
want
to
to talk
talk about,
about a display in the air? I
yeah.
mean, first of all, over 500 yards in the air and 6 touchdowns out of a quarterback is the first 2 to 3 games of the season. He had it in one game.
Video game numbers.
And if I'm correct, I don't think he played the whole game.
I don't think so.
I
No.
don't think he played. And then the craziest part about that, that's crazy. That's crazy. But the craziest part about that is that 5 out of the 6 of those touchdowns and over 200 yards of the 500 yards that he had came out of one receiver.
254 yards to be exact.
So it's just, let's just say, I hope Georgia's safeties and corners are ready to run because Dart, that arm is live.
Yeah.
That arm is live. And I promise you, I played against Jackson Dart. He's a great quarterback. Matter of fact, he is probably one of my favorite quarterbacks I've played against. Between him and Bryce and Matt Corral, those are some of my favorite quarterbacks to play against just because of their competitive nature and just like how they just, you can tell the team, if wherever they went, the team went. Those are some of my favorite quarterbacks I've played against. And if you let Dart just sit back there in that pocket and throw go balls all night, and he keeps hitting them, it's gonna be a long night for Georgia.
Yeah. It's gonna be a track race. I mean, they have receivers for days. I mean, I looked at their box score and there were receivers I hadn't heard of with stats
Yeah,
this past weekend.
they really do.
It's insane. But you have to have that right now, at this point in the year, right? They've
Yeah,
got 2 losses. And it's pretty much been determined that, if you have more than 2 losses, you're probably out. Ole
yeah.
Miss is still one of those teams that's like,
In striking range.
outside looking in, and they really want to make a move right now, and they have to do that by impressing the committee. You impress the
Yeah,
committee by putting up video game like numbers. You have to really show out, and you don't want to run up the score on Arkansas, but this is the position that you're in. And you have
right.
to look way better than everybody else. You have to have something special about you to want the committee to put you in. So I think they did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
And to your point, this high-powered offense is going to keep defensive coordinators up. I know Georgia and Kirby, they're not having to overcoach this week. I bet those guys turned on the film and said, "Oh, we need to lock in this week. These guys can really, really go.
Yeah,
We can't come in sleepwalking. We have to understand that this is a legitimate team. We embarrassed them last year at home.
yeah.
That game in Athens, it got ugly quick. Georgia beat them bad, and it was raining. It was an ugly game for Ole Miss. And you
It
think those
was a
Ole Miss
Georgia
guys,
football game. It was a
yeah,
Georgia
yeah,
football. Georgia. They want the worst weather conditions. They want the field to be muddy. They just want it to be a run and defense type of a game. And they're going against offense that wants it perfect conditions. The field to be perfect conditions. So they want the ball to be in the air. That it's just this is going to be a it's gonna be just. I think this could be just as good of a game, if not better of a game, as the Alabama LSU game, just because of, if one side doesn't show up, it could be a track race. But if the other side doesn't show up, we could be seeing a hard-nosed football game. And I mean, Georgia showed me some things last week where they can be beat on the ground and in the air. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, you could say if number two, the quarterback from Florida, I hate that I forgot the guy's name, man. I
Yeah.
literally just saw
Lagway.
Lag. There you go. If he does not pull a hamstring, I think Florida wins that game.
So we're getting right into it. Let's just dive into that game. Ole Miss has got a real shot, especially if Carson Beck is going to continue to play the way that he's playing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm honestly so confused. They need to do a real study on this about the how far this guy has fallen off since last year, right?
Hmm.
We've talked about before how preseason they've got in number one quarterback in the country. Now it feels like he'll be lucky to go third round, but he's just not seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's what's confusing to me because you don't just become bad at football, right? I've
Mm-mm.
heard folks say, there's this excuse that's running now that says, oh, well, it's because, Ladd McConkey's not there and Brock Bowers is not there. But I don't want to hear that excuse. I mean, they still have real talent on that team and on the offensive side of the ball. You've got ETN in the backfield, got a really good
Mhm.
offensive line. They got three legit tight
Yeah.
ends. And then
Yeah.
you've got Bell on the outside, you've got Smith on the outside. These guys are real playmakers. So yeah, you may not have a guy that's as good as Brock Bowers, but you're so good as a committee. This offensive skill group may be better than it was last year. So I don't
Yeah.
want to hear, that, he doesn't have his crutch anymore. Something else is going on.
Yeah.
And it's just in this era of football too, where the coaches can talk to you in your ear until 10 or 15 seconds left on the play clock.
15 seconds left on play clock.
How how are you still so confused on what you're seeing and what coverage you're looking at?
And that's a thing. When the play clock gets to 10 to 15 seconds, well, I'm just going to put it as from a defensive perspective, as a safety. The process I went through as a safety, quote unquote, quarterback of the defense, what I went through as the play clock was getting low. So when they come out the huddle, I'm looking at down the distance. So that chops down half of the things that are going through my head. That chops down play calls, routes, all that. Then I go, okay, how much time on the clock? Boom. Now I'll go to the play clock. Now the play clock, once I get to about 10, 15 seconds, I have a great idea of what they're about to do. As a quarterback, it's the same thing, especially you have a coach talking to you for more than half of the play clock. So I don't know if he's just looking too much pre-snap. If maybe a lot of now I'm gonna say this, a lot of players don't do good with a coach in their ear. They start looking at too much. It
They're
messes up with
thinking too much, yeah.
they're thinking too much. Because it's not like he's getting beat with these exotic coverages.
Mm-mm.
I mean, he's throwing corner routes into a cover two look
Yeah.
with the corner and the safety crashing on the corner. You can't have that. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? I mean, you're throwing it into a spy defensive end on a crossing route on the backside. You got to be able to see that as a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? So
Or at least
I
anticipate it, right?
at least anticipate it.
Even
You
if
know what I'm
that's the
saying?
back, even if that's the back end of your if you're going through your
Progression.
progression and that's the back end of your progression, you should still say in the back of your head, okay, I know what coverage it is, or at least the snap, I know what coverage it is, right?
Yeah,
Once
yeah,
that ball snap, everybody's going to where they're going, right?
yeah,
So if you've already determined too high middle field open, then you should know that where everybody should be on that field,
oh,
right?
absolutely,
And so it feels like he's pressing, it feels like he's overthinking. And so that's
absolutely.
why you see him throwing into double coverage and throwing interceptions. I mean, it has become really bad. I've got this here. So Georgia was, of course, overwhelming favorites. They outgained Florida 455 to 228,
Hmm.
and they outpossessed them by 10 minutes.
It's crazy.
That
And
game
they
should
were
have been a
down.
blowout. That game
And
should have been a
they were
blowout.
down for really the whole game.
Yeah, I think most of
They
it,
were
like third
down for
quarter is
most of the
kind of
game until
when
late third.
late third is when it kind of flipped.
Yeah.
But that game's supposed to be a blowout based on if you
Uh-huh.
just look at the box score. But that's what happens when you turn the ball over. And I promise you this, you turn that ball over like that against Ole Miss, Lane and his boys are going to score on those turnovers on a short field. You throw a pick, they get the ball on their side of the field, they get on plus
Yes.
territory, they're going to score. Lagway got hurt, and so now, they're not scoring every time that they get a turnover. They're going
Mhm.
three and out, or they're having a punt, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, they're not going to be punting the ball
They're
if they
not.
get the ball in plus territory. That they're just not. So
Yeah. I mean,
there's
I'm
a
gonna tell you this right
real
now.
you got an Ole Miss team that's trending this way, and
Mhm.
Georgia. I mean, I won't even say they're trending the opposite way
They're
because as a
plateauing.
team, I mean, some of the plays that these guys are making on defense is super
Amazing.
impressive. Then you got the freshman running back who's coming in after ETN who looks like a beast. It's like Georgia. They're
Yeah.
growing running backs in their
Yeah.
backyard. It's ridiculous how that continues to happen, how
Yeah.
they never miss on a running back. I
Hmm.
still don't get that. But if, so everybody else is playing well, but Carson Beck is he's about to crash this Lamborghini.
Man,
He's
he's
like
about
this
to crash
close
it into the
to
ground,
crashing this
man.
Lamborghini right before the SEC championship in the playoff.
And I'm gonna tell you this, man. I've played against Lane Kiffin for 3 years, and I mean he's up there with my favorite people to play against as of a coach. I mean, you got your Jimbo Fishers, your Lane Kiffins, and et cetera, but he's up there, man. And just like we were talking about with Alabama, every team has their shot zones. If Lane Kiffin, if the ball touches the logo, tell your safeties to back up
Yeah.
because he is going for the end zone. I mean, you can look back to Elijah Moore and Matt Corral. If that ball was even, if it was on the backside of the logo, he is going for the end zone. And if he's in plus territory and it's 4th and 4, the offense is staying on the field.
Yeah.
So I hope your defense, I hope Georgia got a couple more gasses in this week because they're going to be on the field a lot and it's
Yeah.
going to go fast.
Hope you're in
It's not
shape.
going to be a huddle. It's going to be a legit track meet, and
Well, they're
so
trying to, and Ole Miss is trying to prove a point right now. They can't
they
lose
have to. They
anymore.
have no choice because I mean, if you look at the standings right now, if a couple more losses by some big time teams, Ole Miss is in striking range
Oh,
right
they're
now.
fine. I mean, I think, and the strength of schedule will be there. They're going to be
Oh, absolutely.
fine. I think they've got a real. I mean, they just got to win out, and having a win against Georgia will definitely set the tone and
Hmm.
kind of give them a path to that playoff. But so I think we can assume, all right. So you got Alabama, LSU, you got Georgia and Ole Miss. The rest of the weekend, other teams in the SEC, I think we can assume Texas is going to beat Florida. I love to see the fight out of Florida. I gave Florida a hard time preseason. I thought the coach was going to get fired by week 5. I really did. But
Hmm.
they've showed some fight, and they're kind of standing up for their coach right now. He may be okay.
Yeah,
And if Lagway can get healthy going into next year, they recruit a little bit better. You know what? You never know. Maybe hit the
yeah,
portal a little bit, but you never know with Florida. I've liked what I've seen recently. They haven't just, laid over. And
yeah,
so I guess you can assume Texas will be Florida. And then, I hate to say this, but I think we can assume Tennessee's probably going to beat Mississippi State just based on
yeah.
how State's been playing this year. But shout out to Mississippi State winning their homecoming game against UMass
Absolutely,
this
man.
weekend.
Absolutely, man.
A win's a win. You got to take it.
Gotta take it, man. It's hard to come
But
by.
and then, Vanderbilt's got South Carolina. Neither one of those teams are in the fight. But is it fair to say, Texas beats Florida, Tennessee beats Mississippi State?
I would say so. I would say so. I mean, I think, like you said, Florida's been showing a lot of fight, but losing your star quarterback is probably the biggest blow you can take at this point in the season. And I mean, at any point of the season, losing your starting quarterback, your captain, is something that you just never want to see. It's that's a hard thing to come back from. And I mean, Mississippi State, they're gonna fight. It's in our blood to do so. But it's a tough season this year. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the young quarterback is doing really good right now. I mean, he's throwing he's got a pretty ball, man. He's been putting up some good numbers and stuff like that. I can see Mississippi State putting up a good fight this weekend.
Mhm.
But winning in Vol country, man, that's a different it's a
All day.
different level. It's a different level of audience. I mean, you can almost say going and playing against Tennessee up there in Knoxville is, I mean, it's close to playing in LSU in Baton Rouge, man. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough. So I'm gonna always cheer for my Bulldogs, man. You know what I'm saying? I think they can win. On a biased note, but it's gonna be a tough game. It's gonna be a tough game, and they're gonna have to make some really, really big plays, and they're gonna have to rattle that quarterback a little bit.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think those are pretty much chalk when you think about those games. So let's get back to what we talked about a little bit earlier on in the show, SEC championship.
Mm.
After all this shakes out, right? And, we're not doing East and
Yeah.
West division like we used to do in the past. Who are your two teams standing at the end of the SEC regular season?
So the crazy part about it, I think we were like game three, game four in. I told somebody, I was like, look, man, maybe a weird group of teams, but don't be surprised if you see Texas and Tennessee in Atlanta. That's a those are two good ball clubs that the loss that Texas has is like I mean, you lose to Georgia. I mean,
Yeah.
you lose to Georgia.
Hmm.
Everybody loses to Georgia. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like a surprise, or it's not like a they did lose at home, so that may deflate that balloon a little bit. But I mean, you lost to Georgia, man. That's a
Mhm.
good ball club. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I mean, if you look at it right now, what team is putting up points? What team is playing the best defense? What team is hitting on special teams and hitting on all cylinders right now? I mean, it's hard not to look at those two teams. You know what I'm saying? It's easy to say, "Oh, Georgia's going to be back there in Atlanta." It's easy to say LSU has a shot or Alabama has a shot, but when you realistically look at it and you look at how the teams are playing right now, I mean, Tennessee has one of those offense. They can go shot for shot with you. They can put up 30 to in between 30 to 40 to 50 points a game. You know, and I mean, just like we talked about earlier in the show with Texas. I mean, they have two quarterbacks that can put up some serious numbers. So I mean, when I look at it, man, I just feel like it's hard not to say those two teams right now.
Yeah. Well, and Texas has to be careful too with, sometimes if you have two quarterbacks, you have none, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to upset the locker room or rattle that this late in the season. But I do agree with their depth. I think that Sark has done a really good job over the last several years just building depth. I mean,
Hmm.
especially in the trenches. I mean, though their offense and defensive line really they look like a real SEC ball club. I know they're in our
Absolutely.
conference now, but they look like they belong. They really do.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's just so hard for me to say Tennessee is gonna win anything. It's not in me. It's just too much Commodore in me to say that. But I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that next week after this, so you've got this weekend, Georgia's got Ole Miss, Tennessee has
Mhm.
Mississippi State. I think that the winner of the Tennessee Georgia game is going to play Texas in the SEC championship game,
I can agree with that.
and that's going to really come down to which quarterback plays better in that game,
Mhm.
which one has the least amount of turnovers. So I think next week we'll really have a better idea of what our SEC championship is going to look like. But I
Yeah.
do think Texas will be the team that kind of is sitting in the background just watching while everybody else dukes it out. I think
Yeah. I
they're
think
pretty
so too.
solidified in my book to be SEC champs.
Hmm. I
Um,
agree.
but so this year, you've got the playoff system, you got 12 teams. Realistically, how many SEC teams do you think can get in?
we're being realistic, if we're saying which team do you think has a chance of beating these SEC teams? I mean,
Just even like if we're being realistic, like based on record and everything else going on right now, there's 3 games left. You have to pick however many teams, which teams could they really got a shot of getting in.
I say Texas, of course. Say Texas. Um, Georgia, they have a shot at getting in, a great shot at getting in. Uh, I say LSU. I think LSU has a great shot at getting in. Um, I know Texas A&M took a bad loss last week against South Carolina, but that's a good ball club. I know they dropped down a little bit, but I mean there's some room for some wiggle in there. So they can sneak in late in the season. They can sneak in late in the season,
They
but
need an LSU win against Alabama, though.
yeah, they really do. They really do. They need LSU to show up in Death Valley this weekend. Um, I mean, realistically, probably just 3 teams, man. Because I mean, you got your Ohio States, you got your Oregons, man. I mean, you got some teams out there that are really playing some ball right now. So I say realistically, it's probably like 3 of us in there, 3 to 4.
I like 4 teams right now from the SEC to get in. I think that especially with Tennessee only having 1 loss right now, if they lose to Georgia, say Georgia wins it out, they beat Ole Miss, they beat Tennessee, they win out. Georgia's in the SEC championship, Texas in the SEC championship. Georgia only has 1 loss. Texas has 1 loss. It'll be a rematch. Either team is getting in with 2 losses, right? So there's 2 teams right there. The winner of the Alabama LSU game, I do think gets in. That's 3
Yes.
teams. And then I do think that if Tennessee wins out, except for the Georgia game, I think Tennessee gets in. They've got a
Yep.
legitimate argument to get into the playoff. So I've got 4, and I think that's awesome for our conference. It shows,
Yeah.
our dominance, and that nothing has changed. Even if we go to, I guess we're the Power Four or whatever now, and
Yeah.
there's rumors of just a Power Two. It doesn't matter if the SEC conference, the Southeastern, conference is still alive and well. Then we're going to be right there at the top every year.
Absolutely. Every time.
Um, but I will say this, you talked briefly, and this will wrap us up for today, but you talked briefly about Ohio State and Oregon, and we kind of have our top 5 or 6 teams outside of the SEC that we all are keeping our eye out on. But I think a team that, listen, I'll raise my hand and said I lost faith earlier on in the season. But there is this team that's making some noise right now that is kind of going under the radar. And then you know what? I never would have said this, but I think they're almost appreciating going under the radar right now. That's not their normal
Yeah.
MO, but they're playing better, I think, because they're just more locked in on football than anything else. But
Yeah.
that's the Colorado Buffs. Man, the Colorado Buffs may actually
Flag.
sneak in and into the playoff. They've got a real shot. And I'll tell you why. They've got 2 losses. There's a real opportunity to win out. There's 3 games left. There's a real opportunity to win out. But do you really think the College Playoff Committee is going to leave out a 2-loss Colorado team that has the Heisman Trophy winner on there and has Deion Sanders as the coach and Shedeur Sanders, who a lot of people believe will be the #1 overall pick or at least the #1 quarterback taken? You think the playoff system doesn't want those views, that viewership coming into the playoff? Come on, man. There is a real path for the Colorado Buffs to make a playoff after winning, not even making a bowl last year.
I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head, man. These guys are playing right now. And I mean, to add to it, Deion Sanders is the head coach. And then to add on to that, possibly the #1 and #2 pick of the draft this year or next year will be on the field together.
Yes.
The possibly #1 and #2.
Yeah.
So the best athlete in the nation and possibly the best quarterback in the nation are on the same team. I tell you what, they got a big test this week too.
Yeah, Texas Tech on the road is
Texas
going to
Tech
be.
on the road, that's going to be a good test. I mean, I must say I haven't watched much Texas Tech ball this year, but from what I heard, they got one of the best running backs in the nation.
Okay.
He has over 100 yards in every single game this year.
Wow.
So he's run the ball. And I mean, if you've watched any Colorado games, any team that runs the ball heavy and they have a good O line and their running back can run through arm tackles, they have problems with them.
Yeah.
They have problems with them. So I mean, this is going to be the committee is watching the Colorado Buffs this weekend for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because they got to see if they win this game, they have a chance. They have a good
They really
chance.
do.
They
I
have a good
think
chance, man.
I think that, after watching them play Nebraska earlier in the season,
Mm-hmm.
I said there's no way this team goes to a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
There's I didn't see any hope in this team after that Nebraska game. I don't know what was said. I don't know what was done, but this isn't the same team that played Nebraska
No.
earlier on in the season. And of course, you see the Travis Hunters of the world continuing to play out of his mind. But you've got the Jimmy Horns of the world who is starting to get some confidence, man, and might be one of the fastest guys in the country.
Yes.
They've got other weapons as well. But the one thing that stands out to me is their defensive line. Warren Sapp, I mean,
Yeah.
he has really turned around that defense that has struggled mightily in the past. But I mean, they're getting sacks, they're getting TFLs, they're running. I mean, they're dogs up there now, man. Warren Sapp
Mm-hmm.
has hit a button with those guys, and they are responding, and it's just it's interesting to see. But it's entertaining, and that's what it
Yeah.
comes down to in the playoff. If a team has two losses and they can be entertaining, they can bring eyes to the televisions, then they got a shot. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see how that plays out this weekend.
Absolutely.
Well, Colin, you know what? I always appreciate you being on here, brother.
Always, man.
We
Always.
can listen. We could talk for 3 more hours if
That's,
we really wanted to, but we don't want to.
hey,
We don't want to get too far in the weeds with you guys. But thank you all again for tuning in this week. Please tune back in again next week. You can find all of our content on our socials. We've got Yellowhammer News, we've got YouTube, we've got Spotify, we've got it all. So please tune back in. We look forward to seeing you next week.
absolutely.